Welcome, family. This is Monday Quality Talks. This is the 50th episode, indeed. 50th episode. You know, when we stay consistent and keep at it, you tend to look back and be like, dang, 50 episodes later, we're here. And it's been a journey. It's been a journey. Not been as consistent as I should have been. But you know what? The most important is to just keep pushing. You might be delayed at times, but gotta keep pushing. Welcome, family. As I said earlier, Monday Quality Talks number 50. Today's show, tonight, this afternoon, this morning, wherever you are located in the world, is a very special show. I have a big brethren of mine, inspiration, a mentor as well, a man who is a legend in the game. And I know a lot of people feel a certain way about being called a legend, but I think being called a legend is not, pejorative in any way, shape, or form. It's because it truly testify on the contribution of one one person in a given industry. And in our industry, this man has indeed shaken quite some grounds, helped really. Massively the ascension of Afro House globally. He has a history that speaks volume in years and collaborations. The guest that I have tonight is none other than Mr. Zepherin Saint, the one and only Tribe Records onshore, head onshore indeed, and a man with many hats who hope will be sharing some of these secret recipes of his as to how he managed to keep himself so fresh, so also hungry for new sounds and just keeping pushing his own creative envelope. So without further ado, let me bring on board Mr. Zepherin Saint. What's going on, brother?
How you doing, brother?
We're here, man. Always looking fresh. As I was telling you right before we got on, I look older than you, bro. That's not even possible. How is that even possible? And I do look young. So for some people, I'm like, no, brother, D, you're doing something secretive here. What's the secret?
You're still looking young and fresh, brother. Don't worry.
Thank you, my brother. How you been, man?
I've been good. Yeah. Been hanging in there. Based in Australia now, as you know, and just continuing life.
Oh man, amazing. Man, we have not been in touch in a while, and we've been busy as well, traveling around the world, and tell me about this, man. I think a lot of people are actually wondering what's been going on. I mean, can you give us a little bit of history, maybe, so for those who may not know who you are, because there's a lot of, interestingly, I'm noticing that the people that are watching the podcast are really across the board people from outside of our industry. So a lot of people are just really super curious about knowing who the guests are. So
yeah, cool. Well, where do I start? I mean, in relation to, I guess, where our relationship started, it was with the label Tribe Records, and we've collaborated in events over the years. And I started the label Tribe. I think it's going into 13 years now, 14 years. It was a label that started out of the UK, along with an event that would happen in the UK. And that event then went on to have residencies in Paris, in the WMC, in tours in the States.
Bro, the Miami residency was something else, man.
Yeah, that was some good times.
The National Hotel, I still remember to this day.
You
guys were dropping some of the. It was the biggest event of the conference, hands down.
Yeah.
I
I think
mean,
that was our first year. I think that was when it kind of really exploded. I think maybe because like it came with a different sound, and that
the
sound
packaging as well. The packaging was really great as well, man.
cool.
You guys
Cool.
already understood at the time just the concept of packaging it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, branding, as we know, is so important, right? To our game. You know what I mean? And for me, it's always been about, if you're going to do a label, if you have the means to do it, you've got to have an event that goes alongside that, because
100%.
it will expand your audience. It will always bring in a fresh audience, and and like I say, have your branding, out there. You know what I mean? To spreading the word about what it is that you were doing. So WMC, I think it was 2010 or 2011. I'm getting old, man, so I don't remember all the years, but
I think it was, if my memory doesn't play with me neither, I think we're looking at 2010, yes, around the time,
yeah, around that
2010,
time.
2011.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And
crazy.
you came in and played. You know,
It,
I think Kulo came in and played as well that year.
exactly. Yeah, man.
Yeah, he was a very young Kulo at the time.
Indeed, just up and coming.
Yeah,
You
and
guys broke a lot of talents too, man. Jeff,
Jeff.
oh
Yeah.
man.
Well,
Started a lot.
You introduced me to Jeff.
Yeah, yeah, I did. I did introduce you to Jeff.
Yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah,
and because I knew it was the perfect match. I just knew, and we did, and bear in mind, I've been as offering, we didn't have that. I mean, I didn't have that the power play that you had, and interestingly enough, like the way Tribe really took things over is unprecedented in the sense that I mean, everything was unprecedented. Bear in mind, you remember, bro. We literally started the whole thing, so everything we were doing was new.
yeah,
And and the last time I had a conversation with somebody, I said, right now, yeah, there's a couple of labels that are doing the things in the Afro House realm, even though it's more Afro tech than Afro
yeah,
House. But the only label that really had that impact, both on releases and also event wise, is Tribe Records. And since then, you know, we've tried to do our own event, and it never really matched the level of production and of just quality that Trap managed to put together. But also that might also come into being understood, given the background you have, because you're not a newbie in the game. You've been at this for quite some decades, and
yeah.
and maybe that experience may have played a role in giving you a bit of a lead, advantage.
Yeah, I guess it did because I've always been around events
Hmm.
since my teen years, so I've always seen how events have been put on and put on a load of events and tours for bands well before I kind of got to the Tribe days, and
And
that
what was that in the UK at the time? Or
yeah, that was in the UK,
Mhm.
UK and the US. I was a manager for 10 years, actually,
Okay,
managing,
I remember you
produ-
mentioned that to me. Yeah.
managing producers, songwriters, and artists, and
Mm,
that also that involves taking my artists on tour,
yeah, yeah.
around the country and Europe at times.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that kind of taught me a lot. Seeing how those tour managers
Imagine.
and
Yeah, yeah.
managers work. So yeah, as well as having my stint of managing clubs myself. I used to manage the what used to be called the Decks, which is now the Prince of Wales.
Prince of Wales. Yes, indeed. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember. I remember you
yeah,
brought me there the first time for
yeah.
your
So I
event.
managed that for a good 2-3 years as well. So yeah, it's just kind of being around, clubs and that environment. You just pick these things up.
100%, man. I mean, and you were one of the. I mean, I'd love first. You know what is interesting is this is what I love with these shows. Where we start with one idea and then we end up just talking about
Yeah,
still
right.
related to the concept, but just go right into it. And I love that idea because
Oh,
I don't think you and I we had a chance to really tap into this, and it's even more beautiful that through this mean of technology we can actually share that with the world because um, the way you even managed to actually associate. Tribe Records to other brands. Like I remember the Miami conference, or the first event you guys did was I mean the who's who of the industry was there. And then the second one you guys did the following year, it just was an absolute rampage, man. I remember like man, it was mad. Mad. And just the brand associations, like I remember you had like these the speakers, the very strange speakers. It was the beginning for the speakers as well. It was a new thing.
Yeah. It was Void. They just launched, and so we got Void to bring in the sound system. And that was their kind of like their stage to launch their product at WMC. Bro. And now they're everywhere, Void. I mean, they've done really well. Been a lot of clubs.
But you see, but this is the thing. So having had this capacity to be able to pitch the product to these guys and say, okay, come alongside and let's do something together. I don't know how the conversation went, but that is something that you clearly see is lacking even to this day. Because we don't have enough access to the knowledge on how to actually present a project and a product that can be attractive for potential announcers, potential sponsors, business partners. And man, I remember this was really mind blowing. I mean, you had the goodie bag, a lot of things go hooked up nicely.
Yeah, I think it's about kind of aligning yourselves with people who are just starting out the same way you are, because I think a common mistake people make when they want to try and go for sponsorship, is that they try and go above their means. You know what I mean? And they try and go to a provider who isn't really going to take that much notice of them. Whereas if you try and find providers who are kind of like also keen and enthusiastic to get their product out there, then you have a partnership. And then you have you're exchanging something that's equal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I always think that's the best kind of partnership is an equal exchange. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's just also about finding yourself with like minds, like you and I. Do you know what I mean? In terms of the events we've done together. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, when you click with somebody, then you know that there's something there for you to that can formulate.
It feels obvious, like natural. Like there's no resistance in the whole fluidity.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Which is important. It's important.
It's crucial. So it goes down to just basic feeling comfortable with the person you're interacting with.
Yeah.
Or at least establishing that baseline where you can find common grounds and sort of like build from that point onwards.
That's right. Right.
Social skills. Not everybody has those.
No, and they definitely need to be worked on within our industry for sure.
Let's actually welcome DJ Butter ATL indeed, who has extended some greetings our way. And big fan of yours. Papa Keisha, the legend himself. Salute Kings. Salute back at you, brother King K. Brian Smith also saying proud of you, brother. So yeah, man.
Bless.
I want to circle back since we're talking about events and stuff. So I think it was last week. Last week I spoke on it was last week or the week before. I spoke on Afro House and I spoke on how our first interaction came about, at least from my recollection, was that email you had sent. It was one of our first exchange where you sent me an email with two promos. It was the track that you did with, it was the one with Nathan Adams, Circles, I think. And then it was that other track that was very ancestral. He had all these references, all the proper references that speaks to to Boddhi Satva soul. And I remember I was like, oh, and and I was getting excited. I was like, yo, is this for offering? You're like, no, that's for that. I'm releasing these. And I remember, man, you came with oh man, with the energy. Huh?
I was going to say, because I mean, those are MySpace days.
Those are MySpace days, bro. Yeah, I remember I sent my Yahoo.com email.
Yeah. Yeah. And I reached out to you on MySpace, and that's where we communicated.
It was. Yes,
that's where we communicated first, because I'd become aware of what you were doing, and I was so inspired by what you were doing. You know, I mean, I need to know this brother. Because what you were doing, I hadn't heard from anywhere. So I just reached out to you and just said, I just need to share what I'm doing with you, just to kind of connect. I just felt at the time, I just returned from Gambia. Not so long. I was producing a djembe group in Gambia, and what that track that you speak of, the other one,
it was Mandinka. It has a Mandinka. Yes.
Yeah. That was something which I made whilst I was in Gambia. So
this record,
that were there, and just kind of like, whilst I was doing the production on what they were doing, I said, okay, well, I'm here, man. I'm in the motherland. I need to get some other, material for me to make something else. I was just so inspired by being there, and that's how that came back. And that was that track, and it was the Mandinka tribe, if I remember correctly, which is why
Mandinka tribe. I think that was
that was a tribe who the djembe drummers were from that tribe, and that's why I honored them. And
called it upon
called the track there.
Man, that record, I recall it to this day, man. I recall the feeling that I had when I heard both records, and I was just like, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Yeah.
And this is something that's important. Like, can you tell us a little bit about your, when you used to be a manager and also a producer, obviously, some of the, not about name dropping, but it's for having perspective and context in order for people to understand the wealth of knowledge you had already gathered prior to entering, what we call Afro house or soulful house music, for that matter.
Yeah. I mean,
some of the remarkable people that you've actually helped as well, along the way.
Yeah. I guess so. I mean, at first it was a hard slog because I had a lot of doors slammed in my face. I was a young 20-year-old, shopping these artists because I built a recording studio in West London, and through that recording studio, a lot of artists were coming through and hiring my studio, and then from there, they started to ask me to manage them because I had gathered knowledge from working previously at Azuli Records as a production manager, and and then from working at Azuli.
For the sake of history, can you give people a bit of understanding of what Azuli represents in the industry?
Azuli at the time was the label. I think it's since been bought out by Defected, but it's run by Dave Piccioni. It was a shooter from the record store Black Market, which was the record store in the UK in the late 80s and into the 90s. I was working in Black Market. I ended up managing Black Market as a store, and then from Black Market, I also
store. You guys were doing Louis Vega in stores and stuff like that as well.
Yeah. And at the time, the customers were like Tony Humphries, Morales, and these were the guys who was kind of coming in the store when they'll be in the UK, and because it was the store, it was the place to be. And I kind of look at that store as my university. You know what I mean? Because I learned so much from being in that building on Diable Street. From being behind the counter to actually, managing the store and its stock to, moving upstairs to working as a production manager on the label. And then the label was also distributing Dave Lee's record label, which had just started, which was Z
Records, yeah.
Z Records. So we were also distributing. David just started that label, and he started it through Azuli. So there were a lot of things going on, and it was kind of like Rome Anthony came out of Azuli. So many classics came out of that in the 90s, early 90s, and mid-90s. And then Azuli went on to be one of the main events in Ibiza as well. So from Azuli, I gathered a lot of information on how to run a label. You know, under who was I considered my mentor at the time, Dave Piccioni, who taught me a lot about the industry, and also about how to deal with artists. I learned a lot how to deal with artists from there, because, you know, you had to deal with them on a daily basis, man. And
some serious ego trips.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. So from there I gathered a lot of information, and also I studied, you know, in terms of reading books at the time on the music industry and finding out more, as much as I can, about music business, as well as, you know, producing. So yeah, I kind of found myself in a position where I had this recording studio and had all these artists kind of coming through, and none of them had representation, and they were really talented. And then before I know it, they were asking me to manage them, and producers were asking me to manage them. And then I found myself shopping deals. And one of the artists I signed was Terry Walker. She couldn't, I couldn't get her a deal in the UK at the time, so I actually went to the States, and the second record label I had a meeting with, Def Jam, wanted to sign her, but they didn't want to sign in the States. They wanted to sign in the UK. So they wanted me to set her up as a first artist in the UK for Def Jam. So that's what she became. She launched Def Jam in the UK, and my way of doing things, even back then, which was I'd learned from the States, because I had a previous deal in the States with another artist, with DreamWorks, was to always finish your productions first, finish your album, and then take that to the label, because then you was going to the label with more strength, and you already have your vision in place. So that's kind of what I had done with my second artist, which was Terry Walker. We finished the whole album, and then we took it into the labels, and then they signed that. From those albums I've worked with, and the artists are, you know, we had Mos Def on there, Ron Campbell, the producer. We had I've worked with Beanie Man, you know, through one of the producers I was managed at the time. We did there was an artist, Jamelia, who we were producing, and I came up with the idea to have Beanie Man, you know, feature on it, and that single I think went to #5.
Beanie Man and who?
Sorry?
Beanie Man and who on the single?
Jamelia.
Yes, Jamelia.
Produced by an artist.
Oh my God, yes.
Produced by a producer who I was managing at the time called C Swing. So that was great, because that gave us the experience of going to Jamaica to record with Beanie Man, and that actually happened again. We recorded with Beanie Man twice.
Must have been something as well, right? Recording.
Yeah,
that was at the peak of his career as well, right?
Yeah, that was an amazing experience. You know, worked with his name's Dirt now, but at the time it wasn't. It was R. Kelly. Worked with him at the time, and yeah.
To which respect were you guys working together? On the production aspect of things, or?
Well, he was producing. He'd written a song for one of my artists.
Wow.
So it meant us flying to Chicago to record with him. And even though my artist recorded the song, that album never came out. But the single did come out with another artist. It was called "I Need an Angel." It came out with it actually got quite high in the charts in the States, I believe, when it actually came out. But yeah, those kind of 10 years was really kind of like back and forth between the UK and the States. I worked a lot with these producers called Tim and Bob, who were really kind of.
Oh yeah, man. Big time.
Yeah, I learned a lot from being in. I actually recorded a whole album with Tim and Bob with my other artist, who's called Daniel DeBoer. And I learned.
Did that ever come up? Did that ever come up?
It never came out. It was on Signed to DreamWorks. It never came out, which is what happens. Do you know what I mean? In the major industry, they'll spend all this money on artists, and and it just never sees the light of day. But that experience was huge for me. Just kind of being in the studio with Tim and Bob and kind of seeing their whole process of how they do things. I learned a lot from just watching them in terms of recording vocals, producing vocals. You know what I mean? Big arrangements. You know what I mean? So that was a really big learning curve for me around that time. And we're in record plant every day. And so it'll be Pharrell in the other room producing Janet Jackson, or everyone who was kind of like who was the main producers around the late 90s were at record plant in LA, and it was amazing being around that environment.
Man, I can definitely only imagine how amazing it must have been indeed to just be part of history and play a role in history as well. And to a certain extent, it feels a bit strange that such contributions are not being celebrated the right way in our industry. And it's one of the things that I keep telling people. I mean, at least in the house meets might celebrate it more, but Soulful House, for example, you don't really hear anything celebrating anybody. I mean, yeah, you might have this event in the one in Italy. Is it Groove Odyssey? No, it's not. There's no awards or no actual celebrations that are being put together. Besides, obviously now as of recently through this whole pandemic with Carlos Mena's Bembe Awards, which I think is a great initiative that really deserves to be supported financially and as much as possible by the whole industry, because it really means something.
Yeah.
But not because you've done what you've done only, but because you're still doing what you're doing. And even if you were just doing that back then and not doing anything now, just celebrate our pioneers and the people who've really paved the way, for this generation that's coming.
Yeah.
It's really something that I think we spoke, or we may speak of between ourselves, but it feels like we're not able to take action on it. It's almost like we don't feel like we should celebrate one another the way it should be done. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe you have a different vision on it. But I think that's, for example, like for me.
Oh, I think you're right. I think what happens is that when people don't feel celebrated, they'll move on, and that's a shame. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't.
Oh, good, bro.
Got a call coming.
I understand. Business got to be happening.
Let me get you back up. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so when that doesn't, I'm going to get that off. Yeah, people. When it causes people to move on, and it causes people to. It doesn't allow a scene to flourish. No. So I agree with you when there isn't a platform there for everyone to be celebrated. Because even I love what Giles Peterson's doing with his worldwide awards.
Yeah, but you notice that he was speaking about worldwide award because he's only celebrating a certain kind of music or genre or certain elite, I would say, from the industry, where it seems that we are not, or well, obviously, we are not part of that group. It's almost like, you're on the outskirts, keep doing your little thing, keep playing in that little, area of it.
Yeah. Well, I think everyone has.
Nothing against Justin, but I met the guy, he's great, but I think that, it's a big organization, not to cut you, but it feels like it's the guy appreciates the music, but I don't know how much of that resonates within, the structure.
Well, I guess it's just down to everyone's curation, right? Everyone has their vision and their curation for their brand and what it is that they want to achieve and what it is that they want to support. And that has to be respected. You know, there's enough power and know-how within the genres of house, soulful house, Afro house, whatever you want to call it, to also do that. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yes.
As you've just seen with the IMS awards, you know, the ones happening, that's grown. Again, that doesn't really take into account the more underground side of house.
And is it even still underground anymore? Because quite seriously, brother, I mean,
true.
Question has to be posed, because even now I'm seeing these actually the mainstream guys want to come to the underground because it's where it's happening now. Well, it's always been like that, right? Everybody goes and picks references or influences from the underground, but it's literally like you'll see, like I saw the other day, recently you see Diplo doing like these events, these pop-up events. This is pure underground shit. Think about it. Like it's unprepared. It's very much like, we grab a sound system. If the police comes and shut us down, then we find another venue. I mean, this is underground mindset. And it feels like it's as long as you can take from the underground, so-called underground, great. But then when it's time to give back, it's always been like that. So this conversation is we're talking about it, and we're not the only ones who are talking about it. But it feels like you're right. We do. There is the capacities. There's the workforce that is available, but is there the will though?
Well, that's the question. That's the question. Is there the will? And I think as we get older, and we go through life, I think we kind of, our focus turns to, well, what is it that I need to achieve for myself?
Yeah.
You mean? And what is it I need to get? I need to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? What are my goals? And I think that's kind of, that's kind of what happens. And I think the world is a much smaller place now, where you're seeing people collaborate from different sides of the world. So it's not like how it used to be when a scene came out of a city or a town. You know what I mean? It's the world's a much smaller place, so it doesn't have that kind of that strength in numbers, so to speak. And I think the last place that has seen that and has shown us that was South Africa, in terms of a country that has strength in numbers and has really built a scene together.
And built stars and continues to provide them, which eventually tends to
celebrates their own.
Celebrates it, but also burn them. And it's very interesting. They have the full, pop culture, but very much oriented towards, the sound. I would say more deep house, so deep house music, hip hop, R&B, some Afro, but definitely Afro tech. And I don't know if you would agree with me, or maybe notice prior occurrences of the penetration of the Afro tech sound into the techno world. I said in my last conversation, my last show, where I said I believe, to my recollection and to what I can testify as an experience that I've had myself, even though we had already been doing this Afro tech sounds prior to it becoming, exposed to, Dixon and the whole Innovations. Kulu the song is the guy that actually was the groundbreaker in terms of, introducing the Afro. Yeah, we agree with that.
Without a doubt. The Kulo was actually the first producer I heard from South Africa that really blew my mind, and that was with Zulu Warriors, which I actually signed because I loved that track so much. I think that was kind of like the second or third track on Tribe release.
Was it a license you took from Solistic, or you actually signed it? Because he was already.
No, I licensed it.
Are you licensed? So it was already So because it was already grabbed by Solistic at the time,
yes. And Bright Forest.
My God.
Which was
yo.
So when I heard those tracks, I was just like, "Who is this guy, man?" You know, because what he was doing hadn't been heard.
Yeah, at all.
Yeah. So that he was already on that level at that time.
I agree.
On that level, and then he came with Dragon's End, which I know that we were both trying to sign.
Yeah, you remember, right? But you know, I was given the
to license that.
But I got the license though. I never I got the license. I went to South Africa, got the license.
Right.
But I never released it because I guess at the time I didn't really have, I didn't really have it like that. So I got scared by his lawyer. Who was like,
that story,
oh my God, this guy, man.
Yeah.
And I just was like, you know what? I just never did anything with it. But what a tune. But I think if you release Dragon's End right now with a couple of remixes, even just it stands test of time.
I still play it.
And people still ask, is it new? Is it so?
Yeah. When that came, when Kulo bought that after he'd been doing this instrumental material, I was just like, wow.
It's Fatima, who also had a very amazing career afterwards.
Yeah.
Fatima on vocals, man.
And he was like 17 at the time, if I remember.
He was really, really young, because I remember when we did that Sundiata's Rebels project at my place, he was really young. I can't remember how old he was, but he was really, really young.
Yeah.
And very humble, very, very humble guy, man. And it's amazing to see the progress. And it's amazing to see that you and I and a couple of others have played we've played a role, but we've also been fortunate to play a role in launching quite a few careers in their territories, because they were looking up to what we were doing here as well, right?
Yeah.
But we were looking up to them all the way down to South Africa, and we're like, oh, we want to get into that market. They were like, no, we want to get to yours. It was very interesting. Yeah. And remember that whole craze of everybody trying to move to South Africa.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I was even contemplating that, but I was like,
Yeah. No, for me, it was always about how I saw South Africa around that 2007, 2008 time. Just reminded me of 20 years earlier, 1988, when House had just landed. You know what I mean? In the shores in the clubs of the UK. That's what it reminded me of. It just sounded that fresh to me. And so and I was hearing all these different, and I'm sure you were too. You were hearing all the different styles. Do you know what I mean? So it was evident that this was all going to. You was hearing the vocal style. You were hearing the techie vibe. You were hearing the more traditional led material. So you could see that this is all going to go in different directions. There's going to be genres spawning out of this. I remember I did some interviews when I was out there and stuff, and that's what I was saying. I was saying, what do you think of South African music? I think it's the freshest thing I've heard in a long time, and there's going to be so many genres that's going to come out from this. And for me, it was about getting that music over here, when I was in the UK and to the West, and to try and getting it into the ears of, you need to hear this. You need to hear what's coming from there. And also to kind of like, for those that couldn't hear it, to give them the remix so they could understand it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that was important for me to kind of like, license material and also give it a remix so it had, it had an introduction. Maybe because it wasn't so intimidating to some.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sure. I
So
agree with
that's kind of my early strategy with it.
And I think it was a strategy that paid off. And one of the issues, before we not closing the chapter, but actually my main conflicting point with this whole conversation of South African predominance or dominance in the game is the fact that a lot of people are now coining the movement as having been birthed in South Africa, and that is where the mistake is. It was not birthed in South Africa. Um, Obviously, it is a quick and easy. I think, but that's my opinion. You tell me what we feel, but it's easy and quick to say, yeah, because it's Africa and it's nobody was present. No, 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 no. They had their different interpretation. They had, because remember there was Kwaito, and then Kwaito was his very own, creation and sound identity, sonic identity that evolved um, eventually with time. But if you remember some of the videos that actually came online on YouTube at the time, or some of Daily Motion and so on, I remember you would see like the Vinny Da Vinci is playing house, soulful house, deep house. That's really what the reference point was, and then the stuff that we were doing from here flew there eventually and became sort of like a different perspective as well. Give them a different perspective on how we were doing this, doing what we were doing this side. With the influences that we had in common, but we were just doing it differently. And I think now the narrative that you're in a lot of media is, oh, South Africa, this, South Africa, that's. Let's not forget Angola. Let's not forget Morocco. Let's not forget Ivory Coast with Coupé de Calais, etc., etc. So, what is your take on that?
Well, I think you have a lot more knowledge than me on that side of things, on the birth of in terms of the sound actually on the continent itself.
Okay.
My knowledge will more so come from the roots of house,
Sure.
from the States and from the UK, and Europe as a whole. Because I wasn't that I wasn't that aware of the electronic music in different parts of Africa. I was only aware of traditional music in different
100%.
parts of Africa, and uh, I was aware of your Vinnies and your Christos and
Yeah.
these guys. I call these guys the Godfathers over there,
The other
because they
Godfathers for sure.
they were definitely bringing that sound, of the house sound, to South Africa as DJs and producers. Christos was
Yeah.
producing as
Hmm.
well, because I picked up his Shana, which he was a part
Yeah.
of.
Black
With,
Coffee's first band. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm not that versed on the rest of the continent and what it was doing before that time electronically.
Hmm.
Um, but I do know that the inspiration, of course, the inspiration from we all know where the inspiration for house comes from, and that's from the States. That's from the gay clubs. That's from
Yeah.
Chicago and New York and so on. And we can look at, we can go back and look at Afro-inspired tracks from that period.
Oof, so many of them.
Mafumba Cultural Vibe was a huge track around '89, and that was an African vocal, and that was huge. I think it was on Easy Street label. Um, Warriors that came out of the UK,
I think I
from
heard that
Kid
record.
and Crew. Yeah,
From who?
Coco. I've got to get the name of it right. I'll put it, but yeah, Warriors, that came out from the UK. That was, again, it was like huge at the time. That came out around '88, uh,
Mm. Mm.
and yeah. So these tracks were definitely showing uh, showing the inspiration
Thank
that,
you, Clubhead.
yes, thank
Mafumbe,
you. 86
1986.
Mapumba, yeah. There you go. My years are kind of screw with getting older now. But yeah, that track was big.
But
Um,
wouldn't you say that somebody as well, like, Danny Tenaglia was also producing somewhat of a predecessing sound that could be qualified as Afro? or
Well, it was tribal,
Africanly
wasn't it?
infused, or tribal, yeah, tribal house.
Yeah,
That was the name before, right?
that was the name it was called. It was tribal. That came in the 90s. I wasn't a
Yeah.
big fan of it. I'll be honest with you. I wasn't a big fan of that sound.
Hmm.
But it's what kind of took everything to the big clubs.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It was hard, and it was drum driven,
Mm.
and yeah, and it kind of, there was a couple of moments in there, but I wasn't a big fan of that sound.
What was your sound at the time? What was your?
Well, it was always vocal.
Mm.
I love a song. Do you know what I mean? So I was definitely always behind anything that was vocally driven.
Driven indeed,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, at the time, that came across dance music. Um, and also there was a lot of great R&B around the 90s.
100%, bro. Come on.
So I was also listening to a lot of R&B around that time as well.
Mm, mm,
Um,
mm.
yeah, so but there was a point I was going to make with it'll come back to me. There was a point I was going to make what we were talking about.
The African influence in disco and
Yeah, well, that's been there for some time, hasn't it? And
obviously.
to be honest with you, I don't know if we need to really keep going on about where did it originate from. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? I think we need to kind of start talking about also where it's at now and how can it move forward. Do you know what I mean? I think that's also just as important, because there's so many different avenues and different opinions that will take on where how it was, and I think the truth of the matter is, when you want to talk about dance music, it came from the States, period. When you want to
Yeah,
talk about the influence of the African sounds into dance music, that was there from the early days of dance music that came from the States.
absolutely. I
The
agree.
track
Well,
was
because
there.
it comes along with that whole era of this reconnection with the African American African Americans going back to the continent, and these interactions between musicians and people, very little people, well, from the new generation know, for example, that Fela Kuti was really super good friends with friends. They were actually very connected with the likes of James Brown, for example, and how they were influencing one another. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and I think it's also around the mid 80s, there was a big revolution of us as young black people finding out about our culture.
mm, mm, mm,
And that was across predominantly in hip hop, it was the messages were coming through from your Public Enemies of this world and
yeah,
Tribe Called Quest and De La Soul. And that was also coming, it was filtering into house with Jungle Brothers and someone who was
mm,
also part of that.
mm,
And from there, we okay, as black people, we always want to express ourselves on music in terms of not culturally, we need to express that on music. Do you know what I mean? In terms of uh, and the messages that we want to get across to our community.
mm,
Music was a vehicle for that,
mm.
and it always has been. And
True.
that's what was happening. That's what was happening in the 80s,
Mm,
around 85, 86, going on. And it was only natural that was going to start happening in house music, and it did.
true.
You know what I mean? It did start happening in house music, and people wanted to include their culture into what they loved as a music.
True.
And then from there, we saw the greats be birthed. Your Ron Trents, your Joe Clozels, who you just have to just go back and look at their legacy of their
Massive.
material, and you'll hear the influence of the African culture on that. Yeah.
I could not agree more with you, brother. And to second what you just said about it is not so important to hit the nail over and over, or the and reminding people of the origins of the song. I hear you, but there was, and there is a necessity. No, there is a necessity because Afro House is relatively young.
True.
For things to be set in stone. Why? Because I'm seeing a lot of nonsense being published out there, and a lot of journalists that pretend to be that I've heard. So uh, it's okay. I'll break it down to you this way. First thing that I've according to my observation and analysis, I've was able to gather 9 sonic revolutions in the Afro House genre.
Mm.
9 phases, which is pretty amazing if you think about it, because these 9 phases span over 30 plus close to, a little bit close, about 40 years. It's amazing to have nine. So not that many sounds are able to make this kind of continued transition and renewing themselves. You know what I mean? And a lot of these revolutions happen very close to one another in time. This is how amazing Afro House has been. So according to my observation, so I took as a reference point, Tenaglia, the masters that were, the Ron Trent, Chez Damier, etc. I mean, Shula Day after that, and then we go, obviously you have the Alton Millers and Carl Craig, Theo Parrish, da 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 da. Then you come down to Shula Day. You got the Zepherin Saint, the Vencidos, Boddhi Satvas, and then after that you got the Jeffs, and then after that around the same time you obviously DJ Malvado and all these guys from Angola, but then you have also now Morocco. Like the revolutions really happen very fast and continues to happen. So
as it did with jazz.
Sorry.
As it did with jazz, like just what as you explained there is just what happened with jazz music.
Jazz has definitely renewed itself. Yeah, definitely continues to, and it's true. And I think that's our strength. But the things that you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you come from.
That's very true. I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you with that.
So I don't want to sound like the boring guy that wants to always be like, but you gotta play the fact. Talk about facts.
Yeah.
Drop the names of those who have, because it's all, man, if with all due respect, like, pardon my fucking French, we deserve our laurels because we've been there from the get-go and we continue to be there. We've opened so many doors. We've paved the way. We continue to do so. I'm not saying that we deserve it, but we're gonna take it. I don't deserve it. I'm taking it. You're taking it. We have to take what's ours, and it's our duty to make sure that we remind people that this is the history, because we're not being biased. We're just stating facts. Now, if you want to discuss facts, okay, then I mean, it's discussable, obviously, but I think one of the things that I've also noticed is in the mentality. So, for example, the mentality of soulful house music, or deep house, or underground house music, as we might call it, has always been very much about, brother, sister, love you. It's all about my house is your house, and we're all one family. And this is what, and remember, you and I, we spoke about that before, and I think you can recall how frustrating it was for me to feel that this was couldn't be so far away from the truth. And you were like, I mean, you shared a vast amount of information with me as far as to that eventually helped me sort of like, put some perspective on all that. But to this day, I think that's one of the good things about Afro House is that the new generation are very unapologetical. They don't care. And they, because as you said beautifully, you referred to the hip hop and, the good R&B of the 90s, that era. Those kids are now taking this because they're taking these references even more than us, and they're appropriating it in their own ways. And they're like, they have no fear to say it as it is. They won't speak between curtains about anything. They'll blast you on the internet. And yeah, it's fucked up, but at the same time, now it keeps the game in. Now it gets the game to be a bit more interesting, entertaining. There's an entertainment part that's been missing in Soulful House, and I think if we may say, Soulful House as a sound would never die, but as an industry, I think it died a little while ago. I don't know what's your take on it.
As an industry, it dialed. Well, you know what? My take on it is this: is that everything comes and goes,
True.
and everything comes around full circle.
Mm.
And when it's gone, it still keeps bubbling there underneath,
True.
and then it just takes a song or an artist to just kind of revive and bring it back up to the surface again.
I like your take on
And
it.
that's how I feel. That's what I feel about Soulful House. You know, I found it really interesting that around 2007 to 2009 gave birth to so many record labels
Mm-hmm.
with the whole digital era,
Yeah.
right? There were so many of us that started up
Yeah.
around that time. There was a lot that was already going on, but there was so many that kind of like came in
Launched. Yeah.
and you know gave a new vibration
Yes, sir. I agree.
soulful to the soulful scene. And even I mean you were killing it. You were doing all these mixes
Yeah.
from like all the 90s R&B tracks and the early 2000s R&B tracks, and Rancido was doing a lot of that as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. He was.
suddenly there was a new sound that came in with the whole soulful side
Yes.
mixing
Yes.
with the afro, where it was just like, oh wow, we're kind of hearing an R&B type vocal over the house beats, but it's different. There's something different about this. Do you know what I mean? So but it came up and it lasted for 4 or 5 years when it was kind of strong with that, and then it
Mm.
simmered again.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? Everything comes back round.
Oh,
And
I agree with you. That's without a doubt. And I
and
think.
and,
Go ahead.
and I'm just saying, that's my take on Soulful House. Wherever it's at now is where it's at.
I
It
get
may
you.
not be at, it's not where I would want it to be.
And what would
Musically,
you want it to be? What would you want it to be? That's my
well,
question.
I think it's I would want it to be a lot more original,
Mm. What do you mean
and
by that?
well, a lot more. I think there's a formula that
Mm.
Soulful House has got stuck in,
Yeah. True.
and and that formula just makes it really boring.
Mm.
Just
To a
being
certain
honest.
extent, you started to change that formula quite a bit. The recent releases you've dropped have been pushing the boundaries a bit, quite a bit. I mean, you've always been doing that, but even more so as of recently.
Yeah,
Am I wrong?
I'm not scared to try something new. As of you, do you know what I mean? There's and there are a few producers out there who are that way inclined. Um, Ocean Lade is another one. Do you know what I mean? It's
Oh,
like the approach to doing soulful dance music is completely different, and it's those mindsets that make the difference, and those that just want to this is the trend now. We go back and get a disco beat and we just put a beat behind it and then we're calling that soulful house, or and then you get a rush of everyone doing that,
yeah.
or whatever that trend may be.
Mm.
The sad thing is that soulful house is falling into that trend making business of music, and
Mm.
that's what's kind of made it feel killed off. Do you know what I mean? Um, and that's a sad thing about it. With that, with to me, with what's happened with that style, it just needs to have a bit more originality going
Mm.
on. People just need to just to be a bit more freer with it,
Yeah.
and not feel that that's what's number one or number two or number three in the chart. So my next tune is going to be like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very. I mean, business wise, it makes sense, but eventually, yeah, you. So this then calls for another question. That's a very interesting question where um, I can speak of personally because I think you and I we spoke about it some years ago. when remember there was I was encountering quite a few backlash with all these R&B remixes and all these, and I really started taking these remixes to a level of actually kind of like dropping mixtapes with my
Yeah.
ancestral soul interpretations,
Yeah.
and a bit of a backlash that I got from promoters, some promoters, and
Really?
so on and so forth. Oh yeah. Um, and having been called by some, not directly to my face, but again, as a common thing in this industry, is everything is behind. Oh, he's a sellout. And I remember seeing
A sellout for what
just
reason? A sellout for what
for
reason?
bastardizing the sound by introducing more commercially appealing elements, by making it a little bit more democratized so that the wider audience can embrace the sounds that we love. But the way, as you say, the format, as you say, for example, for Soulful House, the format is such that it's not attractive to a profane audience. It might be nice to listen to, but the songs are too long. The solos are too this, da, 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 da. So you got to find a way. How do you compact this whole thing? How do you make it more digestible by somebody who's never heard a song, a soulful house joint? You know what I mean? So I
Radio
think,
edits. Radio edits.
well, I guess that's the way.
People forget the power of a radio edit. And
But not everybody knows how to do a radio edit
yeah,
neither.
and it's such a simple thing that it allows your song to have a breath of new life and get played on a radio show, because no one's going to play an 8-minute song on a radio show. Do you know what I mean? So you need to be able to kind of do a radio edit version, so you can be included. And
Yes,
it's
sir.
surprising what tracks can be included on radio shows once they have been given that kind of edit. And to go back to your point about when you were talking about people saying that you're a seller, I think that's a load of bull,
It
because
is.
the, a lot of the tracks and these edits that would happen gave birth to so many great ideas. Look at your Tracy Chapman,
Yeah.
for instance, and look where that went in terms of someone taking that idea and then taking it to the charts and making it a number one.
Yes,
Do you know
sir.
what I mean? So
Yes,
it's
sir.
just like, those are the things. It's just like, Tracy Chapman taking that kind of style vocal and putting that over an Afro
These kind
house
of beats.
to me. And to me, I still play that track because it gets everyone singing and it builds the atmosphere.
Always.
To me, that's not selling out. That's genius, and that's forward thinking, and showing how the sound can be interpreted across different genres.
I agree with you a 1,000%, brother. And you're one of those who actually have really put into implementation and practice what you're just speaking of. As in, you're like, oh, because this is when your producer hat and your marketeer and just this brain of yours just start like, okay. And I'm not trying to talk on your behalf, but my perception of how your thinking process has been, because I've always been very admirative of the amazing work that you've done with Stripe, and the records that you're curating and releasing. There was a thought process behind it, even the artists that you've launched. I mean, Nathan Adams and so many great vocalists that we had not heard of before. It's just the work as not only as an A&R but as a producer, to use reference point from your peers or contemporary artists, and now really doing it in terms of production and owning the rights to the song. Because of Tracy Chapman, I mean, it was the massive success in the clubs, but I never owned no rights to that song. So imagine had I had a cut a deal with them or something, you know what I mean? So this opens the way, but in all of these things, as you said, have opened a lot of ways and opportunities for what we're seeing now. But circling back, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, the problem is that, and this is what I had learned from working in the major record industry, and working with publishing is that people didn't understand within the house community how to take something, a track, and make it their own in terms of or cover it basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very much something that's been done for years and decades within the major industry. They cover songs, and that was really getting done widely in the house. It is now because people can see, oh, I can just cover a song and pay my MCPS and do it and get it out there, and it doesn't just have to be an edit. Do you know what I mean? So that's the knowledge I think that just wasn't around enough.
Absolutely.
Within the independent industry at that time to take advantage of what you guys were creating.
100%. And this also echoes one of the advices that Keisha had been giving me, is that, look, do covers. Stop giving away these great music for free like that. Do covers and pay, as you say, your MCPS and release these joints, because these joints can guarantee you a lovely little income every month on your Spotify and so on and so forth. So it's very interesting how, sometimes, not having the knowledge is one thing, but putting it into practice is another, because it's the resources. You need to find a good singer that knows that will be able to properly, do the cover, and then you also need to be able to recompose the song or create something original enough to be attractive. Social mentioning. But point being that to what you had referred to earlier, the very difficult choice between making money and still paying homage and respect to arts. And I think that's a very complicated balance to keep.
I think I don't know if you've heard of the notion of 1,000 fans, and maybe on the chat, but you need 1,000 fans to make yourself a good living, right? For music, and once you've had 1,000 loyal fans and you've built that up, which in today's market isn't, it's achievable. You can make yourself a good living, a standard living. The issue is that people are out there trying to get 1 million.
That's true.
Right? And you can stay true to your art and make yourself a good living, delivering to those people who are on the same level as you.
Yes, sir.
Being consistent, delivering to them, so they know that they're getting something from you, and make yourself a living and stay true to yourself, rather than feeling, oh, I have to do this to I have to change my style to in order for me to make some money. And also, this is as producers, this is our trade. So when you learn how to produce, you also pick up other skills, and those other skills can become monetary for you, whether it's mastering for somebody else, whether it's mixing for somebody else, or you're out there doing your DJ gigs or whatever. All of this comes together and builds up your income. The problem is that people feel that I have to. And if you want to do something if you want to be that type of producer where you're doing something that's kind of like not where your heart's at, and you're happy with that, so be it. Do you know what I mean? But there are ways for you to be delivering what your heart feels,
100%,
and also earning an income from your skills of what you'll learn, what you've picked up from the industry. You know what I mean? And there's libraries. There's the publishing side of things that you can get into and deliver music to libraries on the side of what you're doing to release. And there's so many different ways, but the problem comes when people are like, I need a hit, I want to be number one, I want to be that guy or that girl. I want to be that person, and that's where the frustrations start to come in, and people don't remain true to themselves. So to me, it's not that complicated. It's just a matter of, do you want to remain true to yourself? Then there's a way for you to do it.
Voila, merci beaucoup. I like that you've isolated even more the point by emphasizing if you want to be true to yourself.
Yeah.
Me, in my case, the way I found my balance was I want to be true to myself, but since I'm capable of doing so many things, whereas because before, to give you perspective on where I'm coming from, I used to be told that my kick drums should sound a certain way, that my snares should be a certain way, that I could not do certain sounds because it would be very conflictual with my image, this and that. So there was that was a certain era of music, but it's no longer like that anymore. That's also maybe thanks to some of the challenges some of the risks that we took by just breaking the barriers and these virtual frontiers. But in doing so, there was a phase of alienation that we've called upon ourselves when when you drop a track like Circles, for example, is very ambitious. I mean, as much as the soulful can embrace it, but it's not necessarily your first kind of vocal that they're gonna look for. They're like, who is that boy that sings? This guy sounds like a boy singing on this R&B. Like, what the fuck does this think he is? This is the problem that I'm telling you about, and I think that we've played a very important role in breaking these formats by coming in from the perspective that we're able to amass through the years. You before me through what you were doing, but me also coming from Central African Republic with a certain type of background. I think all of us have really contributed to pushing this envelope. But if I'm looking at now, for example, in a practical way, thanks to the streaming and also because of the streaming and the way people consume now content, look at the way you consume content. I'm pretty sure you would not remember the picture that you scrolled and looked at on Instagram 2 hours ago, unless it's something really, really. But otherwise, so imagine 4 songs. There's so much music being put out there every Fridays. There's only so much you can remember, and there's only so many, especially if you're one of these artists that want to release music, being true to yourself and this whole yada yada yada, which I have respect for. But I mean, if that's your only source of income, then don't complain you're not making money and you have to struggle because the system is built the way it is. It doesn't care about your emotions. It doesn't care about what it is that you're unhappy about. It just cares about you feeding it.
Yeah,
it's a beast that you constantly have to feed, and
yeah,
it's just like how people are. I find it interesting when I hear people saying, life is so hard. So this, like, dude, like, what do you expect? There's always going to be pills. There's always going to be shit happening. So if you stop every time something happens, we're not going to go anywhere. So I think the approach that you gave with the 1,000 fans is an amazing approach, and I think platforms like Patreon really help. I think solidifying that. Having like 1,000 fans, but even just 100. Imagine you have 100 people giving you $50 a month.
Exactly. It's the same as you going out there and as a 19-year-old kid and having a job. It would be giving you the same thing. There's enough platforms out there, and right now, this is, to be honest with you, there's never been a more exciting time to be making music.
I agree.
Because of everything that's available out there. The amount of distribution companies that are there now that are paying advances to producers and artists.
They still do pay advance?
Distribution companies are paying advances.
Wow.
There's platforms like Horus.
I didn't get no advance from the orchard.
Yeah. I
wasn't big enough at the time.
There's platforms like Horus, for example, that you put in your stats, and based upon your stats in terms of what you've been streaming so far, and you thought up for yourself so far, they will give you an advance to help you deliver again. So there's.
And can you please elaborate on the based off of what are they giving you the advance. Let's say, is that in the case you're presenting them with your catalog, or you already are distributing your catalog through their services? That is under this premise that they are giving you the one. Can you please explain a bit better for maybe not only me to understand, but anyone else watching?
Well, you can. A lot of it is. I mean, I can't sell their services for them, but it is designed that you can custom which way you want it to go, whether they take your back catalog or it's for your future catalog. It's up to you to design which way you want that to go. But that's just one platform, and there are many platforms like that who have started over the previous 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
There's the other one, STEM, which is, where they kind of like they've designed it in such a way where they pay to all the people contributing to the track directly. So there's some interesting ways people are kind of like innovating in terms of how can we distribute music for individuals and cut out middleman, which is the label.
Yeah,
that's what's going on. I mean, the labels are getting cut out, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. You know what I mean?
They'll always find a way to thrive and survive, man. The labels are very. I mean, I was looking at a guy that's doing pretty well here. Let me see if I can go faster. Sorry. This guy has just got signed recently to Sony, and you can see how Sony's now really trying to tap into this Afro house sound really big time, at least here in Portugal, right? And it's great. I mean, I think they've given him a distribution deal, but they also, I think, they involved with promotion, marketing, and stuff like that. But it's not just a distribution deal, but I think I don't know the terms of their deals, but according to what I'm seeing, how involved Sony Music is, it looks like it's not just distribution. There's a little bit more involved there. But you have you have to give it to these major labels. They don't lack resources to find ways to still bring people, even though you know that it can help you, I think, to a certain extent, being with a major label, maybe as an artist, or maybe for a specific project, and you might tell me what you think on that. But I think ultimately, man, actually, better. Let me reformulate. Sorry. What do you think? What makes sense is what you feel makes sense, but really, like, honestly, from your experience and from your knowledge, what do you think is truly sound business-wise, related to your opportunity to be an independent or with a major, or being distributed by a major?
That's an easy answer for me. Stay away from the majors. It's an easy answer. I've had a lot of experience working with majors over the years, and not interested in working with them. I find the first thing you got to try and do is always be in a position where you can keep hold of your masters, and that's the first thing the major's going to take away from you. And they will. So when I talk about these distribution deals, for instance, I talk about distribution deals because you still remain an owner of your master.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? So, and that's always got to be your goal as an artist and a producer. If you're gonna work with a label, you're going to license your material to. I don't own anyone's masters. I license people's masters because I think it's their right to have their material given back to them after a certain agreed period, or renegotiated, because it's their work. It's their creations. So, yeah, I have no time for major record labels. I don't believe they have true artist interests at heart. It's at the end of the day, it's about the bottom line, and that's what you're going to get. And that's what's going to happen to you. And when you want to be able to deliver your art, you may be questioned because what you delivered before was a hit, and why aren't you delivering that now? Why do you want to go somewhere else now, for example? And that's a typical scenario that will come from a major record label. Whereas there's just so many avenues that's available to people to start up and release their music that they're on their own, that when they do get it to a point where a major label comes knocking at the door, you'll be able to negotiate from a much stronger position where you do remain in control of your masters, for example. And maybe they are just doing the promotion and the marketing on your behalf. You know? So
but they're taking a cut from that too, though. They got to collect on that too.
That's just down to the deal that you want to make at that time. And you know which industry, which genre, I should say, I have the most respect for, and that's drum and bass. Because I remember when those guys were pounced upon by the majors in the 90s. And I remember when they had the meeting at Black Market, and down in the basement, and they said, you know what, no one should be giving their material to the majors. We need to keep this ourselves, and we need to remain independent. And look at where those guys are now for making that decision. They've built their own industry. And whereas people are trying to, I need to get a deal. It's just like, you're missing the point. Take your time and build your empire yourself. Keep in control of your masters, because who knows what you created today, where that will be in 15 years, or who would want to come and use it in 15 years. And if you don't own it, you're not going to get anything from that. You know what I mean? So 100%. It's important to really keep control of that. And also, I would say to people, it's really important to treat everything as if it has got a hit. That means getting your paperwork in order, and crossing all your T's, and just making sure everything is being collected from the right place,
100%. So taking care of business is extremely important.
Yeah, learning your business is extremely important, and not relying upon someone else to handle your business. You need to know your business.
Which avenue would you be able to advise anyone who would want to learn about a business? Where could anyone learn instead of books?
I don't know about. I just think there's just so much information available on the net.
That's true.
I don't think it's hard to find. You can just Google the question, and so many resources.
Yeah, YouTube definitely has everything you need.
Yeah. So many resources will be available to you. I'll stay away from all these ones who saying, "Oh, I can get you this stream, I can get you that, I can get you." I'll stay away from all of that. But there are so many resources available and books out there. Yeah.
What about the spirituality in music?
For me, it's part and parcel of the same thing. And I saw a question up there. I think it was from Clubhead, and he said, "Can you really do that today?" And I think he was referring to, or she was referring to, I'm not sure if it's male or female. I think the person was referring to when I was talking about, bringing our message through the music.
Yes.
And to me, and if I'm correct in that's what they were referring to, that spirituality gets brought through the music. Spirituality gets brought through the music, and that's where our revolution is today. Do you know what I mean? or that's where my revolution is today. And people are always talking about, artists are always talking about what they're experiencing. I mean, that's where do you get your inspiration to write about something in the first place? And if your if your experience is that you're going through is spiritual and is an awakening of some sort at the moment, then that's going to be reflected in your music. Whether you're a horn player, and you're doing instrumental music, or whether you're a vocalist, it's going to be reflected and come across.
Music heals, but it can also do the opposite as well. What do you stand as far as our roles as music composers, music makers, DJs in channeling energies into our sounds, and these frequencies being, as positive as possible. What do you think explains such a gift, and is it something that is acquired, or is it something that is just is it acquired, or is it something that everybody has access to?
Well, I think we all have access to what's in the universe. I think we all have access to that. Whether we choose to tune into it or not is a question. But we all have access to what's there. But for some of us, I think it's it's your natural destiny to be able to deliver what you deliver to audiences in terms of how you play as a DJ and what you're able to conjure up on your dance floor. To me, it's a spiritual place because it's a number of human beings who have gathered together to express themselves. That's a spiritual connection.
100%.
So take away the intoxications. Take that all out of the picture and just look at people coming somewhere to enjoy themselves, to celebrate, to express as the person, whoever the DJ is. It's your job to bring that to its highest potential.
Amen to that.
And that's my feeling on it from a DJ and from a producer's perspective. It's just an expression of what I want to relay at that time. And I've always kind of laugh about it, in that I can't, sometimes I wish I could have been that guy who just be, that worked, let me just continue doing that then. I wish I could be that guy. Do you know what I mean? I'll have a lot more money in the bank. Do you know what I mean? If I could be that guy who could just say, I can't. I just want to, when I'm in the studio, I'm only doing what's coming out of me at that time. And it could be completely different to what I'd done last week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that would show in my recent kind of, people say to me, I thought you were Afro, or I thought you were soulful, or I thought you were this, and I'm just like, I'm music, man. I just make music. I just make music. And if that's what's coming out of me at that time, then so be it. You know what I mean?
Not to fall.
Yeah, and to me, that's my spiritual connection with my music. And if there's something I'm going through spiritually at the time that I want to express on my music, then I will do that. And if I choose I want to keep it private, then I will keep it private. I've got music, and I'm sure you have, that I've just made for myself. I haven't made music. It's just been for me. I've made that. You know what I mean?
I haven't. I used to, but I think now the way I work is very interesting. I'm able to create a song in one day, a full track, and release it the next day on Bandcamp, and have it scheduled for release, next couple of months after Like my release schedule, for example, is jam-packed up until August, mid-August, and then I'm adding more tracks as we go. But it's because I think, just like you, it's a way for me to exude and just take away. Sometimes it's a libation. It's very much like a libation where you just, for me, there's the mystique within the sound allows the sounds allows me to release some of the things that are inside me that I can't necessarily always express in words. So sometimes that's why sometimes I have this very abundant flux of inspiration that I just need to let out.
Yeah.
And then there's points I just can't touch anything. I'm just I'm looking at the machine, but I'm not,
gathering dust.
Yeah.
And it needs that space sometimes, right? You need that space. It's important to have that as someone who's creative. That you can't always be there pounding away, but when you are prolific, it will make up. It will make up for that 10 times. You know what I mean?
What has been? Sorry, you want to add something before I ask you the next question?
No. Go ahead.
What has been your focus in the past? I'd say the past 5 years, and since this pandemic hit, how has that changed your perspective on life and your vision for the future, for yourself, your musical career, or what it is that you're doing?
I think for me, I've spent a lot of time happily developing other careers and launching other careers, and and being a vehicle for other careers happily, and because that's something I find I get enjoyment from. But now I think when you had so much time with yourself and time to contemplate, I've got more to a space of, okay, now it's time. I mean, I haven't released an album. I've released albums for many people, but I've never released one for myself. So
I recall you were still working on one. You still haven't done it yet.
Yeah, exactly. So it's.
I mean, but you were recording songs from the album for the album, right?
I've been recording for years with stuff. I've been recording for a long time, but yeah, I in the past year I have been. Yeah, I've got Robert Owens, I've got Ursula Rucker, I've got Mr. V. I've recorded a good few tracks for an album. So now that's my focus. It's I need to just tick some boxes for what I need to do musically for myself, and I think that's kind of like what's kind of come from that whole period of spending time with yourself in your room and so on. Because I remember when I after you had introduced me to Jeff and I was hearing his productions and so on, I was just like, this guy's got an album in it, and that got me excited. And I called him up and I said, Jeff, you got an album in you. You got to do an album. And he was just, I don't know if I'm ready to do it now. I don't know if I don't know. I said, no. I pushed him. You got to do an album. You got an album in you, and it came together in no time at all. Soldier's Ascension, which we released for him. And
100% big tune, big project.
Yeah, and I love to be that support to others.
You're a great coach. If you were like in the sports field, you'd be a fucking great coach because I think you know how to motivate and you know how to speak. Especially you take the time to understand the artist. You take the time to understand your guy or your girl. That how is it that they're functioning, and you find the right ways to just touch their hearts. That's my personal 2 cents on this. Yeah. I've seen that even with just conversation that you and I would have, and you just said like 2-3 things and be like, oh, I didn't think about it this way. But you need that. You need that perspective of somebody who's just genuinely interested in you doing your best. Remember when I did? We were supposed to do this record together, but I was supposed to release this record with you. Who was this Senegalese artist? And it was delaying a little bit. You're like, bro, just
yes.
And I think that's also is testimony to your character as well. You know as well when it is that you have your limitations, and you're like, look, if you have a better way to do it, and you just do it. Because I think right now I can't facilitate or accommodate at this very moment, and I think that
Yeah.
it takes also courage because not many people can do that. A lot of people are more than happy to that shit, just sit there and collect dust,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
burn bridges eventually or whatever.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. Who am I to get in the way of someone's career, right? You know what I mean? If I can see that there's a bit of better vehicle for someone, then I'm going to be the first one to say that.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
100%.
In order for them to get where they should be getting. Do you know what I mean?
So yeah.
And Tribe as a label for me was never kind of like oh, I need this to be like a defected, or I need this to get a bigger. It was more so I just want this to be a launching pad
Yeah.
for people to be able to just kind of jump off into where they want to get to, and if it adds and if it does that job for people, then that's fantastic. And
it did, and it still does. I mean, it's amazing, man. You John, and still continue to do so. But I like the fact that you're focusing more on you,
yeah,
and very much to your example. I'm doing the same. I think the front
yeah,
recording is very much like you. Even though I didn't formulate it like that, as you have, as in it being a launching pad for anyone who would be, on the record label.
I think you're
But
being modest. I think you're being modest because I think Offering done a lot more, done a hell of a lot for that sound. And there was a time when it was just hits after hits coming out.
yeah, it was.
Offering. Do you know what I mean?
But
Before, so you've done a
I
lot.
saw. I suffer a little bit of trauma with offering. I mean, with that face, because there was a lot of we've done a lot, but then there was also a lot of lack of knowledge on how to run the business and how to run the label and so on and so forth. And I think having had a few issues with some artists, and, especially when, for example, royalty payments, I don't have an accountant. We do everything ourselves. I'm not an accountant. I don't know how to account to it. I mean, I understand the way it works, but it's like, there's not enough money. I spend money already on mastering and making the go explain that, and then they hear that track being played by Louis Vega or Zepherin Saint, and then like everybody's playing. No, not everybody's. And it's like, I think I just got to a point where I was just like, you know what? Yeah, I'm done. And very much to your extent where you're saying, you do licenses. At a certain point, I stopped doing licenses and doing publishing deals, and then I realized I was like, you know what? Even that, I stopped. So I stopped signing artists.
Yeah.
And I focused solely and totally on Boddhi Satva. And the only way I'm going to release another person's music is if we're doing a collaboration together.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Otherwise, I don't release anybody's music that's not mine.
Yeah.
At least for now, until I have a team. Because sorry, go ahead.
No. You're totally right. And I think there was a few of us who kind of like went through all of that. And I saw At Jazz the same kind of like he went for a stage when it was just like his label was really just an output for what he was doing. And I've seen other labels, do the same. And I think we were all just kind of like feeling the same thing. Not really getting the respect from the artists in terms of what it is that you're actually doing as a platform for the artists. Them not really understanding, how much investment is actually being made there, and I think it just kind of like put everyone in a position where they just needed to take hold on a minute and take a breather and just kind of like, okay, let me reassess what I'm doing as a label and producer here, and I think a lot of people had that same kind of feeling because it was the demos. I mean, I stopped accepting demos a long time ago. Just getting ridiculous. It was just the amount of stuff you were getting through, and it was also becoming a bit jaded, right? Because it's just like there are people coming out of the woodworks trying to emulate a sound or do a particular sound, and you knew their heart wasn't in it. and you knew they were just trying to just jump on it and get on that wagon before that wagon stopped at the next station, and then they'll jump onto the next thing, and all of that just it can become disheartening to you as a label, and I don't think people understand that. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, it's very hard for people to understand bottom line what it is to be a head honcho of a label. I mean, being a boss is not everybody can do that. Being a boss of yourself and then having to help run other people's career, and then you end up wasting, not even wasting, but you end up giving so much energy and time into other people and them lacking to understand, not willing to apply the advices because they think they know better than you do, and this and that. You're like, you know what, you're right. You gotta learn on your own and figure it out for yourself.
It's a responsibility.
Yes, I cannot anymore, man. And I think one of the strategies that I've had was to, COVID has forced me to rethink my whole operation and how I was doing things. And I remember having this conversation with my boy Keisha about it. He was like, look, you'll see. The numbers may not necessarily show right now, but you'll see a year or two from now, it will be very visible. And for example, I'm seeing it about 2 years in, 2 years and a half in this new strategy of work. I'm seeing for example, my monthly listeners being, stable at 80, 84, 85,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, for example. Not that it's important, but it is important because it guarantees you a little bit of an income that allows you to pay for things, right? So the more listeners you have, so how do you come about, creating that interest, that traction? Well, creating more music, and as you said earlier, like whatever comes out of you, comes out of you. You just you release it, and if it's freaking Afrobeat, it's Afrobeat. If it's funk, it's funk. But it's just you gotta release it because the people need to hear it. And so once I understood.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
And that's how I've just been functioning, and I don't really care what anyone has to say because the fact is that the people in this industry don't pay for my bills, never have, and the very few who actually are interested in what I do, well, then we have conversations and we're able to understand that the strategy, should they want to apply it in their own capacity, would work for them. Because again, I think I moved from doing music for the DJs to doing music for the people. That's the whole difference. But still being a DJ, still making it accessible to the DJ and the dancer. It's a very weird thing, but I've managed to keep that balance. I don't know how I did it, but yeah.
You're absolutely correct, and that's the biggest misconception that I think producers make, is that they're making music for the DJs. They're not making it for the dancer or for the dance floor or directly for the people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So that's so true, and that's so poignant for producers to understand and realize that stop making your music for a particular DJ. Not gonna that doesn't work. It's not a calculation that's gonna work for you.
Never. It's gonna work for the DJ who's gonna be able to play that music because that DJ will be amassing soundtracks that fit into the story they're telling, but it's not your story. You're helping them tell their story.
Well, people will carry your music forever. A DJ can only carry your music so far.
True, 100%.
People will keep on carrying your music. You know what I mean?
That's very true, brother.
DJ would only be playing your music for as long as they want it in their sets. You know what I mean? But it's music for me. It's important in life because it brings back so much. We hear a song and it just brings back a memory.
Oh man, memories, bro.
Right? I was listening to. I got a radio show later on today, and I was just kind of pulling out some music from my radio show that I'm going to do, and I pulled out "Searching," "Change," and I was just like, oh yeah, I've got to play this, and I was just thinking, wow, what's this? This all these visuals kind of came to me of what this song reminded of for me. Do you know what I mean? And that's the beauty of music. oh yeah, roller skating. Yeah, my kung fu slippers. Yeah, my jeans like striped down the side. My
Yeah.
dicky belt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? My soul boy look, and it was like, you know, and that's the beauty of music. That is the
It
beauty
is.
of music. That's why, you know, we want to give people memories, and that's what carries the music. That's what keeps music
100%.
alive. It's those memories where you first heard the song. Do you know what I mean? You know, or in what you were going through when you heard that song. I'm sure you had people come up to you, as I have, and say, "Oh my God, your song meant so much to me of what I was going through at that time, and you know how it helped me through that what whatever it is that they were experiencing."
Mhm.
And that's what it's about.
Indeed.
The
Indeed.
soundtracks of their lives. That's right, Ken.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. It's a very strong responsibility, but also such a blessing to be able to be somebody's soundtrack. You know, being part of their lives without being in their lives. But our
Yeah,
music is you know, and that's why sometimes when people um, meet you, they feel so connected to you. So there's no, and this taps into another part of another conversation, but it's just that you don't have the limitations or the social guardedness that you have when you meet somebody for the first time that you don't know,
mm. Because music
as
is born.
opposed to somebody that you actually enjoy their music. They feel very much connected to you, so you feel like you know them. You feel like you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, because you studied their music, right? You know, I'm like that with Larry Heard. You know what I mean? It's just like, you know, listen to him so much over the years. I feel like I know him.
I
Do you know what I
feel
mean?
you. I
Um,
feel you.
so it's yeah, you getting to someone's psyche. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So yeah,
Mm.
that's a very good point, and I agree with you on that one.
What is one of the rituals that you put in place, or do you have any rituals when you the crazy part is when you write a sad song, but somebody connects it to the happiest moment of their lives. That's true. That's very true.
Mhm.
So we have so many stories like these. So
Mhm.
what is one of is do you have any rituals that you need, or do you need anything to be sort of like in a certain type of organization or alignment in order for you to create sounds, or it doesn't
uh,
really matter?
to create music,
Yes.
well, I think it's all part and parcel of how you are in your life period. Um, and um, you know, I start my day with a meditation.
Hmm.
You know, I start my day with prayers.
So.
Um, and you know, I think it's about you know, the morning is really important because that's what really sets up how your day is going to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? You know, and you know, when it comes to organization, yeah, I try and um, you know, organize my week ahead. You know, put whatever days I'm doing music on against whatever days I'm doing admin on, against whatever days I'm doing business on, you know, with
Hmm.
meetings, and really just try and organize that so I have the space to do everything to its
Hmm.
best of my ability. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, in terms of like rituals, in terms of like with music, I have no kind of like formatted way in terms of what I would do in the studio. It's yeah, I will start from different places. Do you know what I mean? At the moment, I'm actually working on a track that for Eureka Records in Japan that I've done with Mark de Clive Lowe
Okay.
and Natalie
Well,
Slade,
Marcus
which is a great
Cloud is on.
Australia. And yeah, my approach to it is I'm just working on it at the moment, just purely from it as if it's a reprise before I'm
Mm.
putting anything around it and building up that sound in that way. Whereas opposed to, you know, another track, I could be working on the beats until um, you know, as my first and foremost part to it. And then that speaks volumes for how the rest of the track is going to go. So
Mm. Mm.
I don't have any. I think if I had a set way of doing things, I'll be bored. If I'm honest with you. So I need to keep myself, motivated and excited when I'm in my creative mode and my creative spirit. So it comes from different angles, and I will start off when I could do a whole track using the Moog or a whole track using Juno, and that just gives me a completely different direction on where I take it. You know what I mean?
So
I'm working with other musicians.
So you don't start with a kick drum, for example. It can be anything.
No,
It has to be the keyboard drums. I can't work on a track without the drums. It's very difficult for me.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying to you. Yeah, now I'm not working with drums. I'm just working on the music without no drums and percussion, just shakers, just shakers.
I mean, yeah, you can create some pretty interesting things with shakers. Yeah.
Yeah, just shakers, just because it just gives me a completely different outlook on where it's where the vision of that song could go, and it doesn't keep me boxed into a certain way of it going. You understand?
I understand you.
Yeah, I always choose different avenues.
Yeah, I feel you.
With you, it has to be the drums.
It has to be the drums.
Your drums are so powerful in
Thank you, brother.
In what you do.
I need my drums to sound. So one thing that I've noticed as of recently is very much to echo what you said. I can start some ideas. Well, I still need. No, but it's true. I cannot do it without because the drums inspire me. The melody. I can have melody ideas, but I know they won't be coming into life unless I have drums underline that idea and actually giving it form.
Right.
It really has to be the drums.
Right.
Very funny.
Yeah.
Like if you and me will sit in the studio, you can compose all the music you want. I'll look at you. I'll be like, nothing is gonna come out of me. But if
come out too.
Well, that might give me an idea of drums though. But I need the drums in order for me to add to it.
So let me ask you this then: are you a hip hop man?
Yes, big time.
Yeah, that's where it's from. That's your origin in that beat. That's why that drum is so important. My era is more so song and melody. Early 80s. You take me to my comfort zone of music. It's give me 79 to 85. Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
I'll just be listening to that all night. Do you know what I mean? So it's melody and song for me. You know what I mean?
Wow, man. I feel you. It's because I can hear it in your productions though. Well, I mean your melodies are man. The way you approach. Sometimes I listen to how you play your notes and how you sometimes you reverse. It's like I'm just like so I'm trying to like how did he do this one? You're like shit. Even the way you arrange some of your records, I'm just like yeah, I feel it.
That's just down to just kind of like just growing up with that sound of just listening, being in that age, that age when you're just listening, you're not creating, you're just listening, and you're just soaking it all in as a sponge.
100%.
Yeah.
Would you be able to direct a philharmonic band and strings and horns, and would this be something that you'd be comfortable doing?
No, I wouldn't. But I wouldn't be comfortable, even though one of my first instruments was a cello. But I wouldn't be comfortable doing that. But I know the people I want to work with who can do that, and I have my people who I work with, who I know knows me, knows my sound. We have a conversation, we bring it out together. They take on my vision in terms of where it needs to go. So that's kind of how I work with a lot of the string arrangers and horn arrangers. Horn. Sometimes I do my own horn arrangement, and then I'll just send it straight off to. I get my horns done in Brazil, and send them straight off there. But or sometimes it would be, you know, someone who I write closely with, Damien Smith. He does a lot of horn arrangement for me and a lot of string arranging for me as well. He's a genius with that, got an amazing ear. And we've been just working so closely together over the years that he knows exactly what my vision is when, you know, when I want to. Yeah.
He sees your vision before you even see it yourself, even, I guess.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes he and understands where I'm taking something. If I've taken this production to this level, I say, okay, now I need you to embellish this, and you know, of course, that, and that's when the magic happens, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You're connected with your musicians you've been working with over the years. You know, that's when magic really happens.
What is your next big project, or what is it that you're most excited about? Besides the album, of course, that you're still working on, but like or the record that you're doing for the Japanese record label, like what is going on, brother? What's cracking?
I'm about to start. I've been doing a series of remixes for Soul to Soul.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So so I'm about to do one more for them. So that I'm excited to get that up on the board and get that going. And to be honest with you, I haven't been, accepting a lot of work because I need to get my album done.
Yeah, focusing on you.
So, yeah, I need to focus on that. So that's really what I'm excited to just get in. I've just got so much material there to kind of like go through and complete. I'm just excited to just, get it finally finished.
What are some of the side hustles you got?
Well, yeah, that's
because you're a businessman. So, and I think it's important to give this perspective because it's also inspiration for a lot of people to understand that music alone can't cut it. I mean, it can to a certain extent, but I guess.
Well, I've always known that you can't rely on your passion. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's if I was to rely on my passion completely, especially as you grow older. I think when you're young and you're in your 20s and stuff, it's a different story. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, of course.
As you grow through life, you started a family, you got more responsibilities. You can't rely just on compassion. So you have to be able to utilize your skills and your trade in other ways. I also have an events business where I do a lot of community events here in Australia. So that is myself and my wife. We've started that. We have an artisan market that is really gone. It's gone really well. It's happens once a month. It's 130 stalls of makers and creatives that come together to sell their goods. Fashion designers, ceramic makers, you name it, and amongst lots of food trucks, and then I feature live bands, predominantly singer-songwriter or jazz bands that perform as well. So and alongside that, all other types of community projects that are within the same kind of vein, because I'm about community. I love bringing together, whether that's on a dance floor or whether that's with families or whether that's for food. I love bringing people together. That excites me.
Tribe records. That's tribe. That's huge.
Well, yeah, and the whole ethos of the one sound, one people.
That's one sound, one people. Indeed. I still have my T-shirt. Still have my T-shirt in my building.
So that's what that's all about. So I do that, alongside what I've done with the music.
You're talking earlier about your radio show. How often do you do it, and where can people check it out?
Yeah, so it's on PBS FM. So
Okay.
at the moment I do a lot of fill-ins. I'm filling in today for a DJ here by the name of Miss Risk, and that's PBS FM. You can get it online, and I really use my shows on there to just kind of like show my inspirations over the years. So it's really across the board. You'll hear funk on there. You'll hear boogie. You'll hear some jazz, as well as hear some house, and I've even pulled out some hip hop, some gangsta to play today. So you'll hear, right across the board, and it's just I just go in and have some fun, man, and it's a wonderful release to just be able to play music to an audience here that, some know it and some don't, and some are discovering it for the first time, and they're excited about it. And that's a beautiful thing.
Have you been able to grab the temperature of how people are receptive to Afro house and generally speaking, just deep house and house music in general?
It's a good question, because I haven't.
You haven't?
I haven't really, because I've been getting all these calls for like, oh, I need to interview. I want to interview, and that's been my my only, because I left the UK. I don't know when, 2016, 17.
Yeah, you left the UK around the same time I left Belgium, I think. Yeah. So
Yeah, exactly. And then I went over to Berlin for a while, and so, and it was starting to pop off there a little, the whole Afro house thing. But it was still very much, under the radar. But from what I understand now, it's really predominant in the clubs.
Is it not more Amapiano then? Because I think Amapiano is taking over big time. So
I've listened to some of that material. I haven't got into. I've heard some moments of it, which I thought was really good. I've heard some moments where I thought, oh wow, this is really cool. But I haven't delved into it completely.
There's some good tracks that could be arranged completely differently, but
that's what I've heard. I've already put some notes on some ones that I'd like to edit for me playing. You know what I mean? But I haven't, and I can't even tell you some of the producers that I've liked.
Yeah, because these new guys doing them on piano are like, there's like 7 names in the production credits. It's right.
So are you playing a lot of the pianos?
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah, I played as much as I can in my sets, especially on my radio show, on my podcast, on my show here on YouTube. I do a show every Fridays.
Yeah, cool.
Between 1 to 2 hours. And I play everything. I've been focusing the past couple of shows really a lot more on Afro house, Afro tech, deep house, etc. But I'm going to start diversifying again a little bit more. But I do like on my piano. It's a very interesting sound, and the way they use those log drums, and it's very, very, very interesting. Even the kick drums out there, they're tuning the kick drum. Is this really weak? But then there's this big bass around. It's like
that's what captured me about it, because I liked how the sonics, that they removed the weight from the kick and they put it on the bass, and and put that bounce on the bass as well. But that's what. I'm excited for that sound. See what
too, man.
I want to hear more songs on it. You
know who you should listen to? You should listen to Maporisa, DJ Maporisa, and Kabza the Small.
Oh, send me some links.
I'll send you. As a matter of fact, I'll be hitting you up with a couple of links, man, because there's a couple of guys and gals that are doing some great stuff. I mean,
that's all right.
Man. I got you. I'm gonna hook you up. Before we go, I'd like to formulate somebody, Clubhead 433, and it's a he. He's asking if you accept lyric submissions.
I'm always down to hear lyric submissions. Yeah.
There you go. You have your answer. Sister Kiara, greetings and salutations, sending you love and light. Thank you so much. Brother, before I let you go, because I know you got a busy day ahead. and you've been very generous with your time. Um, any last words you would like to share with anyone watching this conversation, um, that can relate or pertain to the conversation we had or something else? I don't know. Whatever you want to drop
Um,
aside.
I think we covered a lot today, which
We
is
did.
great, and I hope what we've spoken about is been of some inspiration
Mhm.
to someone out there who wants to get into the music industry and wants to find what's the best avenue to take to do that. Um, and also to look at some of the history that we've discussed, and as you rightly pointed out, it has to be, people need to know um, the story of what's happened before. So yeah, and yeah, I just hope everyone can kind of like get something from this conversation. It's been joyful for me,
For me
um,
too, brother.
to you and reconnecting with you.
For sure, man.
Um,
And before, I'd like to. Is there? Do you have any excitement? Is there still something that excites you about this music besides, making? But do you still have like some things that you still haven't done yet that you want to do or you hope to do
oh yeah,
sometime soon?
yeah,
Can you
always.
share maybe one?
Uh, I would like to take my productions live.
Bro,
Yeah, I'd
this
like
is a
to.
whole conversation that we need to have offline because I'm also in that process. Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I'd love to take it. It's hard because I work with so many different vocalists from around the world, so it's not like so there's a whole new concept that would have to be happen with that. But I'll just love to take what I do live because a lot of the music I make is from a live point of view. Do you know what I mean? And I'm always seeing the horn section or the string section I'm always seeing that as I'm producing. So I'd love to be able to kind of like, do what I do and, take it to a stage and, see how it translates in that way. And I think more so being in Melbourne, which is such it's really well known for um, live musicians and bands. That
Mhm.
I think as a city, I think it will be. I think it has the most amount of stages per capita. There's over 2,000 stages in Melbourne as a city.
Wow, that's
So
crazy.
yeah, every bar, pub, club caters for live bands. You know
That's
what I mean?
incredible.
So that's been inspiring to see. That's been inspiring to witness,
Mm.
and yeah, and spurring me on even more so that yeah, I need to take what I'm doing live. You know, and I actually started a label here as well that supports live bands.
Mm.
Called Inner Source. That
How's
supports.
it go?
It's called Inner Source,
Mm.
and I've started that label here to be a vehicle for the live bands I've been coming across that make electronic music. And they're
Curious
great.
to check some of that music.
Yeah, I think so. It's fantastic jazz inspired electronic music, which I've put out. So, by bands like Only, and I did a compilation with an artist here called Horatio Luna. And, other collectives here. There's a JK group who's on the compilation. There's really top level musicians and bands. Um, so yeah, so that's been inspiring to see. I think as we move around the world, right? I'm sure with Portugal, you were inspired in new ways, and I think that's the beauty about traveling this world and just kind of seeing how music touches people in other parts of the world, and how
100%.
they relate to that.
I agree. I agree, brother. Well, thank you for your time, my brother. And
Thank you, brother. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
oh,
Really
please come
appreciate
on. It was long overdue, and we managed to get it. And
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Before I leave, I still want to ask you one question. When it is our time to be called, what would you like your legacy to reflect on as far as your contribution?
Yeah, that's a good question. I tell you what I've done.
Mm.
I took away the thought of legacy.
Okay.
And the reason why I took away that thought is because it comes with an anxiety,
Mm.
right? And that anxiety that it comes with can stop you in terms of where you're supposed to be going naturally, because you're so focused on what am I going to be leaving behind? What am I going to be leaving behind? What am I creating there? And all that anxiety that builds up,
Mm.
I was finding, well, that's not actually taking me to where I want to be, because I'm too focused on something which I don't have a control over.
True.
So for me, I've removed that thought of legacy and I've just let it be.
Mm.
For me, it's about, I just let it be. What's going to happen and what I leave behind will be what I leave behind. Do you know what I mean?
So you
And
have no control of it.
because I've the control I have is what I'm doing from day to day, right? And if I keep focusing on something which is so far ahead, it creates anxiety. And people, I'm sure a lot of creatives out there who may be listening will understand the anxiety that can be caused, that can present itself and manifest itself as someone who is trying to be a creative um, person with their career and with all that they're doing. And I think it's important. Well, for me anyway, it was important to remove as many of those barriers that can bring and and help manifest anxiety, to remove them. Do you know what I mean? And that also comes along with mind chatter, because mind chatter is another one that just kind of comes in and just kind of like, stops you, paralyzes you in terms of what you're supposed to be doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Removing those elements in order for me to just breathe and create freely and let it be. And if the creator blesses me to be in my 90s, able to look back and say, oh, I'm really happy with what I created. Do you know what I mean? And hopefully that could be of an inspiration to somebody else. But the same way as you're at 50 episodes now, and you can look back and say, oh, I'm glad what I created. Do you know what I mean?
And I wasn't sure I was going to reach the 50th episode. Quite
Right.
seriously.
Right.
Many times I was just like,
right. And if you kept putting it in your mind, I've got to get to 1,000 episodes. I've got to get to 1,000 episodes. It's going to create an anxiety, and then you'll probably end up not getting there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So yeah, legacy is something that I have a love and hate relationship with. Do you know what I mean? And
so letting it be is the word that you leave us with. Let it be.
I live with let it be, and time will show up itself and see what I've been able to leave behind. But right now I'm focusing on what I got to create today, tomorrow, and next week. Do you know what I mean?
Amen to that, one day at a time.
Yeah, I hope that makes some sense to you all.
Big time, brother. Big time. Yo, thank you, brother.
Yeah, cool, brother.